right, welcome back to The Painful Truth, where we talk about real stories with real people. And usually they are uncomfortable conversations in order to grow as a human being. I want to welcome our special guest today, Kathleen Moss, who went through a journey of healing from lobular carcinoma, which is a type of breast cancer. And she's going to share her story on healing from that. And if you're new to this channel, welcome, and please subscribe, like to this this video, and hit the bell notification so that you know when we drop our next real story. And those who are returning solution seekers, thank you so much for supporting this channel and supporting our guest. And for just a message for everyone, we just ask for you to show compassion and love in the comments, and that goes a long way. All right, guys. So I just want to welcome our guest, Kathleen Moss. And
hey, Abby.
Hi, how are you? Thanks, Kathleen, for coming on and sharing your story.
Oh, yeah, it's an honor. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then you can kind of get into your story.
Okay, yeah. I live in Northwest Oregon, kind of out in rural wine country. I'm married and I have 3 grown children. One of them is still living with us. I got there for a sec. And I'm a nutritionist. I became a nutritionist about halfway through my breast cancer screening journey because I was concerned about my health, and also because I was concerned about my daughter's health and mental health problems. And I believed that nutrition could solve a lot of problems, and I found that that's true. So pretty newly a nutritionist. I've been a nutritionist for about 5 or 6 years. And I work mostly with women who have hormone problems, hormone balancing problems. And I also work a little bit with elders in a retirement community and folks who are at the end of their life.
Okay, awesome. I love that. And I completely agree about the nutrition thing, about how, it is really important for our life and understanding nutrition and how it can heal us and keep us healed. And it's interesting that you work specifically a lot with people with estrogen problems. Um, and yeah, so tell us about how you first found your lump or how it came about.
I actually don't have a lump or didn't have a lump. I have
Okay.
lobular carcinoma, or I did have lobular. I don't know if I still have it. Because it doesn't form a lump, it's almost impossible to find prior to surgery unless it's really big. So it's kind of grows like a spider web instead of forming a tumor. And so, like normal cancer cells have this thing in them called E-cadherin. It's kind of like a glue that helps the cells stick together and form a lump, which is a blessing because then you can feel it in your body. But lobular carcinoma lacks E-cadherin, so it spreads out in single file cell lines. So very, very minuscule, tiny little spider web like lines throughout your tissue. And those lines don't show up until you get it under a microscope after surgery. So what I thought was that I had precancer, and I did have precancer. I had DCIS, and that is, it does form a lump, or a lesion is what it's called because it's precancer. It's not called a tumor. So that's what I went in for. That's what I had my surgery for. And that's what I've been tracking. I assume I've been tracking all these 10 years that I've been doing ultrasounds. About 10 years ago, they found a little bit of a shadowing that was abnormal, but not warranting a biopsy yet. And then 2 years ago, it got to the point where it did warrant a biopsy. And so um, I eventually had a mastectomy. And after the mastectomy, they found lobular in my breast tissue. And thank God I didn't have a lumpectomy because I may have missed it and I may still have it in my breast if I had had a lumpectomy. So part of my mission and my YouTube channel is to get the word out about lobular carcinoma because it's very newly understood. It's only been being studied separately from ductal carcinoma, which is 90% of breast cancer cases. It's been studied separately just for about 10 or 15 years. And so people are just coming to understand how individual and unique it is and how hard to track and hard to scan and hard to detect it is. So that's what they ended up finding in a very, very small amount, at just 2 millimeters. So almost a micro amount of cancer.
Okay, that is very interesting. And is it so what is the difference between, I guess, because there's a lobular, it doesn't start out as cancer, but it's a high indicator of that you're going to get cancer.
Oh, the DCIS. Yeah, that's a
Okay.
precancer. Very common in women now, especially now that we're using mammogram machines all the more. So it is pretty easy to detect DCIS because DCIS is identified with calcifications, little tiny hard points of calcium, just calcium deposits that indicate there could have been some cancerous activity in that spot. And those show up really brightly on mammogram. And it's very controversial, the idea of DCIS. It's hotly debated among researchers and doctors. A lot of doctors think that it is cancer, and a lot of doctors think that it isn't cancer. But if you look at the studies and the data, you can see that it doesn't act like cancer in very many situations. In a lot of situations, it just sits there in your breast, doesn't do anything until you become old and die, and they do autopsies and find it in women who were healthy and lived healthy, long lives and died of other things. So it is a benign breast disease.
Okay.
And it's very confusing because it's a benign breast disease, and it shows up on mammograms and people overreact and overtreat. And I actually do believe that happened to me. I feel like I'm a victim of overtreatment of my DCIS. I think that if I had never had a biopsy for DCIS, I probably would have never grown my lesion and I would have never needed my mastectomy. But thankfully, I got my mastectomy because there was a little bit of lobular in there, and that is an invasive cancer. That is a real cancer. And I'm glad that we did find that. So it's kind of a mixed blessing. Like I had this huge lesion that grew after my biopsies of DCIS that probably would have never grown if I hadn't had biopsies. But thankfully, we did also get out that little tiny bit of invasive cancer. I don't know if that invasive cancer would have eventually gone away or grown or what it would have done, but it gives me a lot of solace and peace to know that we at least got it out of there for now.
Yeah, definitely. Now, and did you have the DCIS back in 2012? Is that when that occurred?
I don't know. I wish I knew what they saw in my imaging back then. I've been trying to find out because I know it was at 1 o'clock. They noted that it was at the 1 o'clock point in my breast. And so I've been asking the pathologist to look back at all of that. They slice up your breast tissue and kind of divide it up and look at it under the microscope. And I'm trying to like play detective and see like was it at
Mhm.
1 o'clock, my invasive lobular, or was that just DCIS? I don't know which one started first. And my expert that I just went down to San Francisco to UCSF and talked to a lobular expert. She's a surgeon and she only works with lobular patients and she studies, most of the time she's in the lab studying lobular. And she said she believes they are totally unrelated. So the DCS did not cause the lobular. The lobular did not cause the DCIS. They grew independently of each other.
That's interesting. And I wonder if she says that and she's very clear on it and confident because it started, there's two different spots or whatever.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever know exactly where they both started. So I'll
That is
try.
interesting. Yeah, right. And so
Yeah.
did you and so what led you back in 2012 to go and get that checked out? Was it a lump at that point?
Yeah, actually, there was a different lump in my right breast. I still have my right breast right now. I'm planning another mastectomy because I feel so much at peace with being flat on this side that I kind of want to just be flat on both sides, just easing the freedom of it. Also for the peace of mind, just to know if I have lobular over here because like I said, lobular doesn't show up in any scans or imaging that you do. So I could very well have it in my right breast. It is pretty common that you find it contralaterally. So if you find it in one breast, the chances of it coming into the other breast contralaterally is about 1% per year. And if you're not taking tamoxifen, which I'm not, then it's a rise in percentage, which is about 2% per year for the rest of your life. So I want to just have that peace of mind that I'm not going to have it come back in the second breast. And I like the idea of having total flatness and freedom without without the lumbar of extra weight and an extra prosthetic weight over on
Yeah.
this side, which is not always easy, especially when you're working out and doing athletic activities.
Yeah.
Prostheses have come a long way, but I just think it's kind of a hassle, especially because I kind of have a large breast on this side. So I need a large prosthesis on this side.
Well,
Um,
and yes, go ahead.
I think I got off your original question.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm trying to remember what the original question was.
Basically back, on that first lump, which was
Okay.
actually in the other breast, and that so
Yes,
that
that's what it
was,
was. Okay.
uh-huh.
Yes. So
Yeah,
I have a
okay.
large pocket of cysts in my right breast, and I was worried about that. And I went into my doctor, and she also felt like it warranted having an ultrasound and a mammogram back um, 10 years ago, or a little over 10 years ago now. So she felt like that was warranting scanning, and we scanned it, and this breast was totally benign. There were lots of cysts, but they were fluid-filled cysts, and so there was nothing wrong with it. But in the process of scanning and looking at this breast, my left breast showed a little bit of shadowing, a very, very faint amount of shadowing. And I should clarify that a lot of women have very, very transparent breasts, a lot of fatty tissue, not a lot of fibrosis. I have a lot of fibrosis in my breast, so they're very dense and they're very hard to see through. And that's why the shadow was so mysterious and hard to interpret. And they just wanted to keep an eye on it. So I had ultrasounds for every 6 months for the last 10 months, just to keep an eye on it. And then I
Wow.
had some symptoms a couple of years ago. I had some nipple discharge, which is another symptom that is pretty worrying for breast cancer. So that kind of upped my game and stepped everything up and made us do those biopsies that kind of led to the growing of the DCIS and the mastectomy.
Okay, okay. So that's what led to that first biopsy or whatever of that shadowing that y'all first found. And then
No, the
that
shadowing just led to more ultrasounds every six
just
months. And most of the
okay.
ultrasounds didn't show any further shadowing or any concern at all. But a couple of years ago, the nipple discharge symptom was what led to the biopsy.
That's really what led to it. That is interesting. And so and why do you think that your body reacted the way it did in forming a lesion?
My doctor, I have a really brilliant medical oncologist that I've been working with. She's down in Southern Oregon, Dr. Lamont at Oregon Integrative Oncology. She's an MD, but she's also an integrative oncologist. So she looks for data around lifestyle and diet and things like that. She has studied something called insulin growth factor, and she has noted that in a lot of her patients, poking and prodding and things like biopsies and even surgeries can really cause a cancer to grow or precancer to grow. And she identified me as being one of those people that has a very, very high tendency to respond to injury, a lot of insulin growth
Wow.
factor. Tends to be people who are taller, have taller people in their family, people who form like cysts every time they get injured. Like I have cysts on my fingers and my toes just from bumping them or stubbing my toes. I have polyps in my uterus, fibroids in my uterus, cysts in my breast, cysts in my ovaries. So I'm a big cyst and fibroid and polyp grower, and that means I have a lot of growth factors. Not everyone has those. Not everyone will respond to biopsies the way that I did. My mom recently was diagnosed with ductal carcinoma. She's almost 90. And when she was 88, during the same time of my crazy journey, she also had a very short journey of just having a quick lumpectomy. And it was noted that her cancer started growing after her biopsy more rapidly as well. So, probably in my genetic line, people in my family have more growth factors, which makes biopsies a really kind of a bad idea for us.
Yep, yep. That is
That's
that
why
is
liquid
very
biopsies are so amazing. They're coming out with technology that will make it so you can get a biopsy just with a blood draw, just to see if there's any circulating cancer cells in your blood. They're not perfected yet, but they're working on that technology, and that's really exciting.
oh wow, that is amazing. That is very
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, wow. And so and I've heard different people say different things about sugar feeding cancer. Does that what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's kind of been proven the fact that we use sugar, we put glucose into our veins, into our system, when we're doing a PET scan to identify cancer. So it's pretty obvious that sugar lights up cancer under a scan technology. And that means that the cancer really likes the sugar in most cases. Now, not in every case. So it's a very generalized statement to say that all cancer feeds on sugar. It's not. No, a lot of cancers feed on amino acids or protein instead of sugar. And that's why you hear a lot of people doing the keto diet will shrink their cancer that way. And a lot of people doing the vegan diet will shrink their cancer that way. And those two diets are kind of diametrically opposed, right? Like you can't do both keto and vegan at the same time because you'd be eating very, very little. But some people do shrink their cancer by starving out of protein, and some people do shrink their cancer by starving out of sugar. But cancer is really crafty and it can get around those things as well. So it's not a guarantee that you're going to shrink it or get rid of it altogether. It might delay the growth of your cancer for a couple of years and give you, a couple of really good, healthy years. But cancer figures out how to feed off of other things. So if you starve it of sugars, it's going to go towards other types of amino acids. And if you starve it of amino acids, eventually it's going to find some other source of, just energy that it feeds on. So it's not a guarantee, and everybody is unique. Every biology is unique inside of us. Our genes are very unique. So it can't be applied across the board. But there are some scientists working on treatments that double up both the glucose, the sugar element, and the amino acid element. And they're studying that over in Poland right now. And I think to some really good success, especially with brain cancer. So, yeah, it doesn't hurt to stop eating sugar because sugar doesn't give us anything good anyway. And
Right.
it causes inflammation in the body, it causes lots of disease states. So, certainly is a good idea to give up sugar. I do not eat any refined sugar at all. And I think my recovery from my mastectomy surgery has extremely smooth because of that. I had very, very little swelling, very, very little amount of liquid in my drain. That one of the biggest pains in surgery is that you have a drain that kind of takes the fluid out when the fluid builds up in your tissue. And I had very little fluid in my tissue. And I really believe that that's because I have a sugar-free diet and lifestyle. So it definitely can't hurt to stop eating sugar. It's not going to cure your disease. It's not necessarily even going to shrink your cancer, but it can't
Right.
hurt at all. There's a lot of benefits to it.
Yes, yes, I agree. And what other things nutritionally do you do specifically for your cancer?
Well, I take a lot of supplements. I especially took a lot of supplements before my mastectomy because I was, for the last couple of years since I had that nipple discharge symptom, trying really, really hard to reverse my DCIS. And my doctor has had some people that have been able to reverse their DCIS just with supplementation. I did not turn out to be that kind of person because of the growth factors, because of some of my genetic problems. I have a lot of problem detoxing and metabolizing estrogen. So a lot of us just carry around estrogen that gets recycled through our bodies over and over and over because we can't detox it. So he was helping me with a lot of supplements to try to detox the estrogen. And I guess we just didn't do that in time, and not in time for the biopsies to come along anyway. So, and I mean, I think it's really hopeful to use mushrooms. I use, turkey tail. I use modified citrus pectin, which is excellent for DCIS. A lot of times it will reverse DCIS in high doses. Of course, I use things like BIM and resveratrol, and all of the things. I had a diet rich in things like crucifers. I eat a lot, still eat a lot of broccoli and cabbage and fermented vegetables. A lot of miso, which is controversial, especially with breast cancer. It is estrogenic to eat soy foods, but in my way of thinking, and I've made many videos about this on my Seeking Deeper Health channel, soy is good if it's organic, if it's not tainted with a lot of um, herbicides and pesticides and things that are going to be more of a xenoestrogen. Soy is a very weak natural estrogen, and it can fill those estrogen receptors in a good way, just the same way tamoxifen does. So soy is our friend as breast cancer survivors and warriors, especially if it's in the organic form. So a lot of diet, a lot of supplement efforts. And I do think they made a big difference because my cancer is extremely slow growing. So that's been a big blessing. It means that I have a much lower chance of recurrence than most women who've survived breast cancer.
And do you think that has to do with the way you eat and
Yeah.
your nutrition?
And my whole
Yeah.
lifestyle, I get lots of sleep. I protect myself from screens at night. I have a meditation practice. I've grown all of these things over the years. So these things are not natural to me. But the hardest thing for me is exercise, and especially in the winter time. I'm very, very active in spring and summer, but towards the end of fall, I get pretty sedentary. So I had to join a gym this year in the winter to keep going, and I do Pilates and Nia dance classes, the things that are really enjoyable to me that my gym offers. And my gym is pretty affordable, so it's pretty nice. I can take a lot of classes there as just part of my monthly membership.
Yep. Oh, that's great. And it's cool that they have Nia. I
Yeah,
rarely meet anyone that knows even what Nia is.
I know.
Uh,
Me too. I love it
yeah,
though. It's so great.
that's great. I love that they offer that.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you in the little structure here that I think your skin is amazing. You look so young. And do you think that has all to do with the way you eat and your whole lifestyle?
A little. I think it's also genetics. I think actually that insulin growth factor part is a
Yeah.
part of why my skin is nice and even for my age. I just turned 50 and my skin is very, very youthful still. And I think that it has to do with that insulin growth factor. It can be a friend too. It really heals and restores your body tissues. So the more of that you have, it tends to be that you have healthier ligaments and skin and sometimes even bone. So there are upsides to having that growth factor. I also use pure oil, jojoba oil on my skin instead of lotions and toxic chemicals. So I've withdrawn from all chemicals in my life. 10 years ago when I first, was starting to screen for cancer, I just started making my own deodorant, started making my own toothpaste, never ever use any lotion anymore. I just use jojoba oil. And if I need it to be more of a thick salve, then I'll add some cacao and something like coconut oil that gets harder in room temperature. So you can kind of play with it, but I really like jojoba oil. I add
Mhm.
helichrysum essential oil and frankincense essential oil to my face oil, so that helps with my face, my skin on my face and being youthful there. So I think that really helps a lot because as you age, your natural secretions of oil just dry up and go away. And so I hit that, at age 40, I started just dousing myself with oils that are natural from the natural world and no chemicals at all. So I'm sure that helps a lot too. It's hard to tell what makes
Yeah,
the biggest difference, but
it is. It is. And well, that's really interesting. I'm all about the natural stuff as well, and taking out the chemicals in your life, cleaning
yeah.
products, anything that you use. And just going as natural as you can because our in our society, most of the stuff that you just buy at a regular store causes cancers. It causes diseases.
Yep.
We got to
Yeah, I've got
get
a whole
rid
book
of
full
that.
of chemicals that are carcinogenic, and I look up everything with, especially with shampoos. The hardest thing to make your own is a shampoo or conditioner. So I look up
Yeah.
all the ingredients in any shampoo or conditioner that I buy and make sure that they're not carcinogenic or estrogenic.
Yes. Yes. And people just don't think about that on a daily basis. Most people.
Yeah.
Um, most people don't really care, unfortunately. Have you heard of the grape detox?
Well, I heard about it from you. I actually hadn't heard about
Okay.
it prior to your sending on the email that you sent me. I do know about resveratrol. So resveratrol is obviously
Okay.
the part of the grape detox because you
Right.
described the detox to me, and it's all about eating the kinds of red grapes that have seeds in them, which is exactly the kind of red grapes that produce resveratrol, which is an amazing antioxidant, not just for cancer, but for heart health and just dementia and aging in general. It's a good
Mhm.
idea for anyone over the age of 40 or 50 to start taking resveratrol. Unfortunately, I've studied a little bit about resveratrol, and it is difficult to absorb. So it's an antioxidant that we don't end up absorbing most of it, whether we eat it from food or take a supplement. However, there is something called trans resveratrol, which is molecularly modified to be a little bit more absorbable. But you'd have to take a couple of grams of that every day for it to be as active in our bodies as it is in the bodies of mice, that it's really shown promising results in terms of stopping cell proliferation, cancer cell proliferation in mice. Unfortunately, humans just don't absorb it as well as mice do. And so I take trans resveratrol. I don't take it every day. I'm not super religious about supplements. I was on such an intense supplement regime prior to my mastectomy to try to avoid having to have a mastectomy that I just felt like I needed a break. And I'm not putting as much pressure on myself to spend that amount of money on supplements as I, but I do take it on a weekly basis. And trans resveratrol, I really like the brand called Designs for Health, because they have a really solid trans resveratrol that they put a couple of other things in their blend that really helps you to absorb it better too. So yeah, I'm a big fan of red grapes. Not a big fan of red wine, however. Up until just a few months ago, we were all told that red wine can cut down on cancer, can improve your cardiovascular health, but it's been categorically proven now that is a causal risk factor for breast cancer. So anyone with breast cancer risk, or anyone who's screening, or anyone who has calcifications in their mammograms, should not be drinking any alcohol whatsoever. It's not just wine, but any alcohol. It causes inflammation. It's been known to cause inflammation for years. We've known that for a long time. But it is definitely not that cure-all, substitute your exercise routine for a glass of wine that we were always reading in the media that it was. And of course, if you think about it, alcohol it's kind of a pure toxin. It's something that we expose ourselves to and then challenge our body with, kind of like exercise. It's an oxidant. It's challenging us to overcome it. And it's not good for our liver. But now we know for sure that it's a causal agent. It's a major risk factor for breast cancer, among other cancers, not just breast cancer. So I'm sober since August of last year. I've been sober. I use the word sober because it gets people's attention. I was not an alcoholic, but I choose sobriety for the sake of my body and for the sake of my health. And that is a really unpopular thing to say, especially when you live in wine country. So I'm trying to kind of hold that banner up as well for other women, because a lot of people just don't know it yet.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is true how a lot of our society, or a lot of our media in the society, is telling people that, a glass of wine every day is okay. However, in my nutrition eyes, that causes inflammation, and diseases, cancers feed off of inflammation. They are gravitated towards inflammation. So it never made sense in my eyes, but I think it is a justification for people who really like their wine. But what about kombucha? Do you drink kombucha?
I do, for a treat in the summertime. It's hard to make kombucha without a lot of sugar. So that's the difficulty with kombucha. It's really, really rich in B vitamins. And so it's like drinking a vitamin shake, kind of, in a way, especially if you need those B vitamins, especially if you're vegan. We don't get a lot of B vitamins from anything but meat. So kombucha is one really rich source. But because it comes with all the sugar that it takes to ferment the kombucha, unless all the sugar is fermented away, in which case it would be pure alcohol, it's going to be very sweet. And so I use it as kind of a special treat every once in a while, like, especially now that I'm sober. If I'm going out to the bar, there are some bars that have draft kombucha. And so that's a nice substitute for alcohol. And you don't want to do it every day or every week because of all that sugar. But as a treat, it's nice. Yeah. I used to make my own kombucha, and I really like it.
Yes, I do as well. I love it. But you are right. If you go that one step further, it becomes alcohol.
Yeah.
If you want all the sugar gone.
Yeah.
Well, and I know and you really should look into the grape detox. It talks, and this is what I was going to say. Do you do fasting?
Yeah. Fasting's actually kind of a new part of my life. I was very anti-fast because I'm a hormone expert, I've been studying hormones for the last 6 years since I became a nutritionist. Mainly the reason I became a nutritionist is to study hormones and the relationship between what we eat and how our hormones behave. Because I know that supplements are not ideal, and food is a way better way to solve your problems than taking a bunch of supplements. But so yes, I've studied a lot about nutrition and hormone balance, and I really think that your estrogen levels, are so dependent on what we eat. And there are weaker forms of estrogen and there are toxic forms of estrogen. And so I think that it's really, really important to look into what we're eating and what it's doing to us. So if we're eating all fast food, or food that's been highly mechanized or industrialized, if it's a white flour based food, then it's going to cause lots of inflammation. And so that's kind of my specialty, is looking into the implications for what we're eating and how estrogenic they are, whether they're going to influence our progesterone levels, our estrogen levels. And I found that the best diet for influencing your hormones is a diet based in brightly colored vegetables and fruits. I'm not afraid of fruits, not like the carbophobic person, but green vegetables and orange vegetables, especially for those of us who are in perimenopause and who are dealing with progesterone dips. So getting a lot of dips in our progesterone, you can really help to foster your progesterone levels by eating orange vegetables. Like we have carrots, and juicing carrots and grating carrots. You don't want to eat carrots just raw because you don't get as many of the carotenoids out of them if you're eating them raw, but juicing them, cooking them, or shredding them really finely, you can get a lot of carotenoids and vitamin E out of them. And butternut squash, pumpkin, those are excellent forms of carotenoids, and tocotrienols, which are just really, really good for breast cancer prevention and hormone modification, especially for progesterone if you're dealing with estrogen dominance. So I have lots of videos about that on my video channel, Seeking Deeper Health. And then I also have a personal channel on YouTube where I talk about my own breast cancer journey, and that's called Estrogen Diaries.
Okay, yes, I love that. And everybody should go and check her YouTube page out. I have it here on the screen. This is one of them, but I think this one will lead to your other one. And I'll link the other one down in the description along with this one, the Estrogen
Thank
Diaries.
you.
Yes, definitely. And are you a vegan?
No, I actually eat quite a lot of meat. I mean, not a lot of meat, but I eat meat like 3 or 4 times a week, but I only eat wild meat, or on rare occasions, if I'm eating out, you can't eat a lot of wild meat. I eat grass-fed and organic meat. So I'm very, very choosy about my meat. I do endorse veganism for those people in the world who can't afford grass-fed or wild meat because it is more expensive. So I do feel as though it is more. I mean, it's not ideal to be vegan in my way of thinking because those amino acids really affect our moods and our hormones. So I'm actually just about to make a video about GABA and serotonin. And one of the major theories as to why we have so much depression and anxiety in our world right now is that we don't get the quality of meat that we used to, decades ago, when we were eating animals that ate a natural diet of green things and berries. So most deer, if you follow a deer around outside, they're going to be leaves off of trees and berries, right? That's what they have in their digestive system from day to day. But the cows that we have in our factory farms are eating grain, corn, oats, soy. These are candy. This is the equivalent of our candy. So if we fed our children candy all day long, they'd get sick. But we're eating animals that are eating things that they're not meant to eat. And so because of that, we have a lack of tryptophan, which is an amino acid that you find in wild meat. And you hear about it in turkey. It's what makes you tired after eating big Thanksgiving dinner. Really, what makes you tired after a big Thanksgiving dinner is all the carbs. But anyway, tryptophan is a really important amino acid that we are lacking in our diets because we're not eating that rich wild meat where the animals are going around and feeding off of things like leaves, grass, and berries. Instead, they're eating things like corn, soy, oats, wheat, maybe things that are not going to produce tryptophan in them that we can then benefit from. And the tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin, which is that mood modulator that makes anxiety and depression kind of even out and go away. So really love an author called Julia Ross. She's one of my favorite nutrition gurus, written a few books about this. And she describes it so well in her books. And she also talks about sugar cravings if you have any sugar addiction. She's an amazing person to solve those problems. So read her books for sure if you're into those things.
Julia Ross. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
interesting. And I would like to learn more about that. I'm personally a vegetarian and have been for 20 years, but I am interested to learn more about the tryptophan or whatever you're talking about that's in the turkeys, that's in wild meat. And also back in the day, they didn't eat meat the way we do it here. It's just
Right.
so abundant. Um, we weren't meant to eat it the way we are now.
Right. No, it's not meant to
Yeah.
take up a third of our plate by any means. It's
No.
meant to be more of a condiment. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And I try to cycle it in and out of meat eating, especially because of that. The cancer can feed on amino acids as well as sugar. So you want to take definite fast away from that. But yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question about fasting. I think I started to, and then I got drifted off again. So fasting, I used to be kind of set against intermittent fasting because women's hormones be detrimentally affected by, especially if you go right into intermittent fasting without easing into it. So our blood sugar in the morning as women is really sensitive with our hormones. So we need to be able to eat in the morning, especially. But what I found with the insulin factor, especially, is it's really beneficial even prior to menopause. I used to not say this, but even prior to menopause, beneficial to stop eating around sundown or, five or between 5 and 6 o'clock in the evening and not eat again until 7 in the morning. For us women, it's really beneficial to give our cells a chance to repair and kill off those negative cancer cells, and to also not to let our insulin go a little haywire, because insulin really responds to our feeding when we're feeding after 6 p.m. So that's been established recently too, very new data. And I'm following that. It's really hard to stop eating at 6 p.m. when you're used to having that midnight snack, but so important for your health and for your hormones too.
Yeah, that it is true. And we're so conditioned to eat like at 7 p.m. or whatever, and then to have a snack later.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that just that in itself is a fast.
Yep.
Just allowing that to happen would be really beneficial for most people.
Yeah, the other way that I encourage folks to fast is I've learned that it's really important to fast around your chemo treatments. Each chemo treatment you should fast for 48 hours around that, and then also around surgery. So I fast 24 hours prior and 24 hours
Oh, wow.
after my surgery, and that kind of just shuts down and quiets those cancer cells. That surgery is such a vulnerable time. If we have cancer cells that are out there rogue in our bodies, they're going to grow and proliferate and spread at the time when we're messing with things internally. So you want to shut that down, and one of the ways that you shut that down is by fasting.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a great tip. And I kind of want to go back a little bit. How did you even decide to have a mastectomy rather than, I know that you were thinking about doing a Goldilocks. Can you explain kind of what a Goldilocks mastectomy is at first?
Yeah. I'll tell you my whole process of thought. It really changed drastically. So from June until August, when we first met with my medical oncologist, I wanted to meet with her prior to surgery because I wanted to know, if I get a lumpectomy, are you going to have me do radiation? I do not want radiation. My friend, one of my closest friends, suffered with pain and just tissue damage for 5 years and lack of mobility with her arm for 5 years after her surgery because of the radiation. And so I said, if lumpectomy equals radiation, mastectomy doesn't, then I'm going mastectomy. And I was kind of surprised. And she said, yes, no matter how big and how bad your situation, your pathology is, I will recommend radiation after a lumpectomy, but not after a mastectomy. And since then, I've learned that other surgeons and other medical oncologists are exactly the same. It's kind of a formula. If you get a lumpectomy, you have to have radiation. If you've had any kind of cancer, and if you get, a mastectomy, you don't necessarily. However, if you had, lymph node involvement, a spread, and a large tumor that's active and invasive, then yes, you probably will get radiation after your mastectomy. So I went from June to August thinking I'm only getting a small lumpectomy. I'm getting it as small as possible because I believe in minimal invasiveness. And I was like carrying the flag of minimal invasion. Well, but if lumpectomy equals radiation, that's invasive too. In fact, that's killing your tissues. Like it's really damaging your body, and it might be hard to heal again. So it might be less invasive in terms of how much you scoop out, but in terms of how much damage you're doing, I think a lumpectomy does more damage when it comes with radiation. And again, not everyone knows whether or not after their mastectomy, they're also going to have radiation. But I had a good feeling, since I only had precancer, that radiation was not going to be indicated for me, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad I had a mastectomy. I was thinking I would be just brokenhearted about it. And I was supposed to have Goldilocks. They didn't end up being able to do Goldilocks because my DCIS was in the skin and in the nipple. So they took more skin than they thought. And Goldilocks procedure is for those of us with bigger breasts that have a lot of extra skin after mastectomy. So they can preserve the skin. So on this side where I don't have cancer, they could just cut out my nipple and preserve the skin and fold the skin over itself and make it into a higher mound, and you get less concavity. So I have, not wearing my prosthetic right now, and I don't know if you can see, on this side, I have a little bit of a hollow right here, and then I have a little bit of cleavage left over right here. So it's not as hollow right here. But the idea of a Goldilocks procedure is you're going to make a bit of a mound, and they have to scrape the top layer, the epithelial, they do epithelialization, so they scrape the epithelial layer off of your skin so that it can adhere to the top when you put the flap over. And that's so much less invasive than going and taking fat from your belly or from.
Whoops, we froze up. Oh, maybe.
Sorry, I popped out for a sec. Anyway, there's a lot of pain, a lot of scarring involved with the deep flap procedures. And so Goldilocks mastectomy is just kind of a solution. It's another way that's less invasive, less painful, less procedures and surgeries than the deep flap. And so I was going to do that on my left side, but they didn't end up being able to do that. And then I've been thinking about doing it on my right side, and I've decided I'm not going to, because the surgeon I just met with down in UCSF in San Francisco told me that with the Goldilocks procedure, they almost always do save a little bit of breast tissue to go underneath your skin. And any breast tissue that they leave is going to be vulnerable to future cancer invasion. So I'd rather have less breast tissue and look a little bit more hollow on the side. I do like that there's a tiny bit of cleavage left over in the middle. And so if they can do that, that's wonderful. But I'm not as worried about my aesthetic appearance as I am with my longevity and my health long term, and avoiding just even the stress of thinking about cancer recurrence. Such a big stress. So I'd rather have that peace of mind.
And having the mastectomy done, is it 100% that you will not get it again in that area, or like on that side?
It'll be a lot easier to find. If there is a tiny bit of breast tissue left behind, it'll be so much easier to find, because what ends up happening is if it's really close to the skin, you'll see it on the skin. You'll see it in the form of redness or a little bit of raised skin or skin tag. So there'll be a lot more indication that it's going on than there would have been if I had a large breast with lots of tissue inside where it can hide in those fibrous bits.
Wow. Okay. And you were saying before that you actually well, let me just ask you, how do you feel with your mastectomy now? Are you happy with it?
Yeah, like I said, I thought I was going to be heartbroken, but Somebody else described it better than I could describe it myself, how I feel. I know there are women that are heartbroken, so I don't want to discount that, and it's different for everyone. But my feeling was when I looked down and, once my scars had not been quite as bloody, um, looked down at myself, I realized that there's a familiarity to it. And when I heard someone else talk about it in this way, I was like, that's what it is. It feels like being a little girl again. I have the same chest
Mm,
that I had when I was little. And that's not scary and that's
mm,
not sad. It's actually really innocent and beautiful. And I've had some, trauma in my life around abuse and relationships with men that were traumatic and even a little bit of sexual abuse. And so I probably don't treasure my breasts quite as much. I feel like I've been objectified a lot and I've had a lot of attention from men that I didn't want, just men on the street, not even people I know necessarily. So I think the reason I'm able to let it go and be joyful about it is that I've had negative associations with my breasts as well. And I didn't treasure them as being like my one beauty or anything like that. If anything, it was just like, they're kind of a big lug to lug around. And yeah, I get all this negative attention because of it. And when I saw the beauty of that like innocent childlike body, I was like, wow, that's me. That's still me. I didn't lose that much. I actually around the same time that I was being screened for cancer the first time 10 years ago, I had polyps in my uterus. And the surgeon at that time, I had a male surgeon, and he wanted me to have a hysterectomy. And I had an extreme, just gut reaction of no freaking way you're taking my uterus. So I don't know why I don't feel that way about my breasts, but I
yeah.
don't. I was sad going in because I thought I would feel sad afterward. I didn't feel sad afterward. I do think I would feel sad after losing my uterus, and I've never even had biological children. I have an adopted child and two stepchildren, but my uterus seems like the seat of creativity in my body. My breasts
Yeah.
don't. Maybe the breasts are nurturing, but I never nurtured anyone with them because I never
Yeah.
had biological children. So, which actually is a risk factor for breast cancer. When you don't have biological children, you have a higher risk for breast cancer. So, yeah, I can't make sense of it. I'm protective of my uterus. Turns out I'm not super protective of my breasts for whatever reason. I do think that they're beautiful. I do enjoy this one now, and I'm trying to enjoy
Mhm.
it for the last, next 6 weeks before my next surgery where I'm going to lose it.
Wow.
But I also appreciate the freedom that I'm gaining by not having something that, you know, bumps around whenever I walk or run or try to exercise. So, and I do
Yeah.
appreciate the childlike physique that I've gained afterwards, which, is totally unexpected. Totally
That is,
unexpected.
that's wonderful. I love that. I'm glad that you're not sad from it. And when was your first mastectomy?
It was in September, so just, I guess,
Okay.
5 months ago, maybe almost
Wow.
5 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's prompting you to get the second one done in 6 weeks? That's right around the corner.
Yeah, part of it is my husband's anxiety about cancer coming back. I felt
Mhm.
like, when I first realized I had lobular, I was like, dang it, I should have had a double mastectomy. That was my first thought.
Mm.
And so then I was like, I have time. I could take a year, I could take 2 years. In my mind, I was like, there's no rush, really, because there's no indication that there's cancer, there's no symptoms. Um, so in my mind, I thought, well, maybe I'll enjoy my one breast for a couple of years. But my husband was really anxious. He knows a lot about recurrence. He's heard his friends talk about recurrence and their wives having recurrences. And he just was like, no, if you want to do that, if that's your instinct to get the other one off, then let's do it soon. And I was like, well, there's no rush. And he's like, yeah, I think it would make me feel better if it was sooner. And I was like, okay, I need to balance that with how I feel, and he knows that and he supports that. But then I started really liking this flat side and I started feeling like, yeah, I don't want to go to the gym and have this prosthetic and this, you know, imbalance. Yeah, let's just do it. So we were both totally on board with not rushing, not feeling rushed. So I took the month of December off, ended up meeting with a surgeon in December unexpectedly, but my idea was just to not do any planning or stressing or worrying about cancer during the month of December because we both had our 50th birthdays in December and wanted to celebrate
Mhm.
fully. And then my idea was get back at it January 1st. We'll set up the date and get going, meet with the surgeon. I want a new surgeon because I wasn't really happy with the way that they finished me on the plastic surgery side on this side. So been interviewing new surgeons and thought maybe I'd go down to San Francisco for my second surgery, but I think I'll heal better being at home and just being restful here. So probably I'll do it on March 1st, which is the date I have set for with my local surgeon. And that's great. That's good timing. The sun might be coming out a little bit by then. I really like to lay in the sun after surgery. I feel like the sun is really healing, really restorative, and that was a big part of my first healing journey was laying out in the sun every morning. So
I love
yeah, that's
that.
the plan
Yeah.
for now. We'll see. Follow me on YouTube to see if it actually happens that
Yes.
way.
Yes, exactly. And can you tell us a little bit about your prostheses?
Yeah,
Your
yeah, I brought it here to show you. This is my most technologically advanced one. I have double D breasts, so this is a very large prosthetic. This is a multi-layer one. It's got a kind of a silky fabric on the outside, and it's got some silicone, a little silicone piece on the inside that's pretty thin. And then this one was made to be adjustable, so it's got a pocket on the inner part that faces your body where you can put this fiber fill to fill it up. Over the years, if someone was just had a single mastectomy and they're going through the menopause changes and hormone changes, your breast changes shape and size later on. So it's really nice to get a kind of a flexible and adjustable prosthesis like this. They're expensive, but if you have insurance, your insurance pays for it 100%. So once you've met your deductible, of course, like I know I didn't have to pay a penny for this guy. So the brand is Amona, and I have a number of videos on my Estrogen Diaries YouTube channel talking about prosthetics and comparing them. And there's some really cheap ones. There's a $10 one that I like that's just a pillow. It's like a fiber-filled pillow. And recently I got one at Athleta that is a kind of a foamy prosthesis that fits really nicely into their sports bras that they sell. And those are only $10 for two, so they're $5 a piece. So you can get really, really inexpensive basic ones, but then you've got these technologically advanced ones that are made of silicone. They're a little heavier, which is better for your back, especially if you have a larger breast. You want to balance it out on the other side and not have spinal problems long term. So, yeah,
Right.
I've learned a lot about prosthetics and become familiar and sharing them publicly on my YouTube channel, even, which I never thought I'd do. But just because I'm a woman who never met someone that had a single breast or a mastectomy or a prosthetic before. So I want to be the woman that, helps others to learn that it's not so scary. And there's a lot of fun options out there, and it's totally doable. You can still feel like you're a feminine shape and wear fancy dresses and look really nice like you used to if you've got a prosthetic that works well for you. Finding the right bra that goes with the right prosthetic takes a lot of experimentation. So it really helps when you have insurance that pays for the bras and the prosthetics. But if you're careful and really try things on and take time and move around and things, then you can find the right match for you.
And will you wear one when you have both breasts taken off?
I'm not sure how often I will wear prosthesis. Like I probably will go down in size.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've already, let everyone know, all my Facebook friends and acquaintances know that I'm having double mastectomy and that I'm gonna be flatter in my appearance. And so I don't think anyone will be shocked. But I did buy the Athleta foam, the little cheap foam ones from them in the A cup size. So most of my prostheses are like a D or a C cup size. When you wear a sports bra, it flattens out your natural breast, so you end up having a smaller cup size. But I've never had an A cup size. So I did buy those just recently, and I just actually last night tried it on for the first time and showed my husband, this is what I look like with an A cup. So I imagine just for the ease of not feeling like it's being misaligned or just needing adjustment, I might wear those A prosthetics. If I do wear prosthetics very often, it would probably be those. that size, and you only get 2 prostheses per year from your insurance. So um, if you have 2 breasts that were taken. So this year I will have to choose what my new size will be in these fancy, expensive at the prosthetic shop. And I imagine I might choose the smallest possible ones just because I like the idea of being lighter and free to
Yeah.
move, and also not worrying whether it's, moving around in my bra because it's heavier.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Just things that you just never even think about.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that you're sharing all of this on your YouTube channel, because you're right. Most people don't have anywhere to lean to figure these issues out. And so I think it's really great that you are sharing that. And I want to tell everybody again to go over there, her YouTube channel for the Estrogen Diaries. I'm going to link everything in the description. And also you've
Thanks.
got you've got an Instagram channel.
Mhm.
The channel is a.breast.cancer.diaries, and I'll also link that down. And other than that, do you have anything else that you would like to share today before we close out?
I just want to share that everybody's journey is different in so many ways. Some people have chemo and radiation, and that is probably more traumatic, from what I understand, is more traumatic than even the surgery and the amputation of your breast, because you're killing part of your body, and it's so against our nature to do that to her. So I really want to honor people who go through that. I haven't had to go through that yet, and I fear that I might in the future. And I live with that fear every day. But just want to say that we're all different, and if you're facing breast cancer, then leave room for surprising, elements, because you may not respond emotionally the same way that others respond. It may be a lot easier. I expected I'd have chronic pain. I have no pain at all. I don't even have numbness. I can feel my breast now, and it's not painful. So my friend's journey was very, very painful, very hard and emotional. Mine has been really, really easy. And so I come on here to share with you that it can be easy. Don't expect the worst necessarily. Let yourself be surprised by the good parts if you're entering into this journey yourself. And there will be good parts, and there will be a huge community if you're looking for it. I find my community most often on Instagram. There are hundreds of women vlogging and sharing photos and being super open and vulnerable about their journey. And if you can see their stories, it will give you so much more courage to go out into the world shaped like the new you, and whatever form you choose to take. Um, we're all a little bit different that way too. So just don't isolate. Get out and meet, either online or in person. Meet those people. I have a in-person support group too. That's wonderful. Meet those people that understand what you went through. That's the biggest piece of advice that I can give.
I love that, Kathleen. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your story and coming on here and being vulnerable, and letting people know how to handle it, and where they can go for help, and just sharing your story, Kathleen. All right. Until next
Yeah.
time, thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing your future videos too. So thank you so much
Absolutely.
for
And ditto.
doing this work.
You're welcome. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.